Picky eaters can make you crazy. We're gonna tackle how to handle that in this video. Welcome to Learning with Love. On our channel, you'll find practical, actionable parenting advice that's going to help you navigate your most challenging parenting problems. So I hope you like this video. If you do, please give us a like and consider subscribing to our channel for more great parenting tips and tricks. Picky eating can be a real challenge. People who don't learn to enjoy a wide variety of foods are certainly going to find more challenges in their lives as they go forward. They're going to have a harder time maybe in different social situations, business settings, traveling to a wide variety of places where their favorite foods might not be available. And it can be unnecessarily limiting. So if you can do something as a parent to help support them in their variety and enjoyment of tastes, then they can enjoy a wide variety of healthy foods. And often it really does help improve the healthfulness of their diet, because a lot of times the foods that kids and therefore then later on adults tend to classically ignore or shy away from are those foods that tend to have a lot of nutritional value. Think of your classic broccoli aversion. So let's dive in and see what kind of things we can do to help make that better. I feel like I say it a lot, but starting off on the right foot and preventing the problem as much as possible first is always easier than trying to fix it later. Starting your child off with breastfeeding gets them off on the right start, if at all possible. And then exposing them to a lot of foods as an infant under 1 year old is really helpful. Really, as much as possible, have them eat a lot of what you're eating. A lot of kids at 1 year old will look at what you're eating and are able to actually enjoy a lot of it. They don't have any preconceived taste notions, and as long as it's not too hard for them to chew, and as long as obviously you're keeping an eye on their allergies, you're welcome to feed them a lot of what an adult can eat. And that is the easiest way to get the kids started in the right direction, is by feeding them a wide variety of adult type foods when they're infants. Beyond that, modeling eating lots of different kinds of foods yourself, lots of different healthy foods, not showing food aversion yourself. So you don't want to show when you're exposed to new foods. That's going to help your children not do the same when they're exposed to new foods. So by children seeing it as a part of their normal life, to see adults and people around them eating a wide variety of healthy foods, that's going to help them enjoy a wide variety of healthy foods. Another thing we can do sort of on the preemptive side is to really engage kids in the process of their food and in the fun of it. So getting them involved with making the food. Maybe they want to spread the butter, or maybe they want to get into the kitchen and help you prepare what's for dinner. They're going to be pleased with their creations, and they're going to want to share that with you and share that with the family. And that's going to help them be more engaged with the idea of trying the creations that they've helped put together. One step beyond that, if possible, is actually engaging them in the idea of where does the food come from, particularly healthy foods. So a good example from our family was that my children had a little trouble eating strawberries because they're so tart. So a lot of kids like them, but for some children that flavor is really strong. Well, we ended up going to a strawberry farm, and they got to pick fresh strawberries off the ground. Now, not only were these the sweetest, most delicious fresh strawberries you've ever seen, but the fun of it, the experience, made them really engaged with it, and they've really enjoyed strawberries ever since. So getting the engagement of where do these natural foods come from, visiting a farm or seeing a friend who might have chickens with eggs, that might be a really good way for them to get involved with understanding where food comes from and making it more fun, particularly those natural foods that aren't wrapped with fun cartoon characters and things like that. Now, those are great ways to lay a foundation, but that's not always going to be enough. So you'll learn early on in your parenting career that you cannot force another person to eat something. You also can't force another person to go to sleep. So more on that in the sleeping videos. A child is in control of what they consume, and that's really for the best. their body is going to send them cues for what makes them hungry, how they feel satiated, and you don't want to interfere with that, right? You want to be able to maintain that body connection so that they have a connection to their feelings of satiation. They know when they feel full, they know when they feel hungry, and that's going to help prevent eating disorders or obesity when they're older. So we have to work with what naturally is given to us. So their job as children is to eat what their body is comfortably regulating for themselves. And our job as parents is to provide a wide variety of healthy foods that are available to them frequently. So with an infant, you're just going to expose them to a wide variety of foods and let them try and enjoy as much as they can. But at about age 2, children start getting a real sense of self and what they want and what they don't want. And that's usually when the food battles start to begin. Now, what happens with a lot of parents at this stage when a child is 2 and they're starting to get a sense of self and they say, no, I don't want to eat that. You're going to see this happen in different ways. One is when a child has maybe been eating bananas just fine for a long time, and then all of a sudden they decide that they don't want to eat bananas. That's kind of a phase, and that's likely to go in and out, and I wouldn't sweat that too much. If they're not in a banana phase right now, no big deal. They might be into bananas later. But with foods that they are unwilling to try, or they've never been exposed to, or they don't really like, this is where we can slowly, as parents, start to expand their repertoire. And let me explain how. So for a lot of parents, a parent might offer peas once, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. The child says no, they don't want it. So the parent goes, I can't get her to eat peas, and they give up. And that's completely understandable, because who wants to make peas 15 times for a kid who's not going to eat them? I completely understand that from a parenting perspective. However, studies have shown that it can take up to about 15 times for a child to be exposed to a food before they like it. So that makes our job a little trickier, because slow and steady exposure to a food is likely to make them enjoy that food over time. So we don't want to give up too soon on something new, because we may unnecessarily limit their diet when they really could be enjoying a much more wide variety of foods, just if they have a greater chance to get exposed to it and get used to it and get used to those flavors. You don't want to get into a power struggle if you can avoid it with, especially a 2-year-old, right? Or toddlers. They get very defiant and willful, and they don't necessarily want to do what you want them to do. And that can be damaging to your relationship, the relationship between you and your child. I would prioritize the relationship between you and your child. So if you're having a lot of these power struggles, or particularly if it's even beyond food in different areas of your life, then work on that first and try not to let the food become so much of an issue. But let's say the power struggles are not happening and you're able to just slowly work them towards getting new foods without big power struggles, then that's what we want to do. So then as your children are toddlers and then progressing beyond the toddler age, we want to gently encourage them to try these new foods. One big tip that I have is try to do, if possible, just one new food at a time. So let's say you present them with a dinner plate. There's 2 things on that plate that they're very comfortable with, that you know they like, and maybe one thing that's new. That could be a very small portion. And then there's some different ways to tackle this. You might just let them play with it, taste it, smell it, see what they do with it. You might encourage them maybe to just have one little tiny bite or taste. In my house, we tend to use the 3-try rule, which is, and actually my kids came up with this one, and I'm not even exactly sure where they got it, but they seem to like it. So they know that whenever there's a new food, they're going to try it 3 times. Maybe they don't love it. That's okay. It's not a big hardship to try a food that's not your favorite. It's not a big power struggle. We're not getting into loggerheads about it, but we're just saying, okay, we'll try it. Maybe it's not your favorite. If it's not your favorite, you can drink a quick glass of milk afterwards, or you can wash it down with some water. In our parenting culture these days, we know that we don't want big confrontation, and that's good, even though we sometimes find ourselves in that situation. But on the other hand, we don't want to not let our wisdom as adults and knowing kind of what might be better for them in the long term prevent us from steering them in a direction that we know will be helpful to them, right? So we know that exposing them to new foods will be good. We know that it will be good for them in the long run. So getting them to try it a few times is not a big hardship. It doesn't need to be a big fight, and it's definitely doable to get to that point where you're like, hey, try a couple bites. Maybe you don't love it. No big deal. Often, after repeated exposure like that, they're going to find that they like it just fine, especially 2 months later when their best friend is eating it. They're like, oh yeah, I've always loved peas. So another way to help them through this process, if there's some foods that are not their favorite, you can certainly add a little sweetness to that by adding ketchup, which is the classic, or lots of, my son likes to put honey on some things that he has trouble eating, but it's still a win, right? He's still eating healthy foods with it, and bit by bit you can reduce the dose of whatever that, crutch is that they're using to help them eat the food that maybe is not as much of their favorite. Certainly, being exposed to new foods and eating a variety of foods and eating healthy foods works a lot better when they are not snacking too much. Now, for children 2 and under, they're going to need some snacks to get them through the day. But for older children, if they don't have too many snacks between meals, maybe one in the afternoon, and then let's say at dinner time you expose them to a new food on their plate right away, they're likely to want to give it a try because they're hungry. And that can be really helpful with getting them to eat more healthful choices. You definitely don't want to get into the habit of making a separate meal for everybody in your family. So you make what you would like to make for the family. And if your child chooses not to eat that, they're welcome to wait until the next snack or meal time, and then they can have what's offered then. If they know that there's always going to be another choice offered up, afterwards, they're going to have you running around the kitchen. It's not because they're intentionally manipulative. It's just because it works, right? So they know that if there's going to be another option better, why should I go for this one? Because it's not what I feel like. So you want to make one meal at a time, offer it to them, and then that's it. If they don't enjoy that, they're welcome to wait until the next eating opportunity, and you might find that then they decide that they want to go ahead and eat what's presented when it's available. A little silliness goes a long way. You can have fun with things that even that that they can eat, but maybe they're not enjoying as much. So like I remember Christopher was having trouble eating something that was a little bit on the spicy side. Not super spicy, just a little bit hot. But that was what we had available at the time. So we were making fun with the water that it's going to be like the fireman with the water hose dousing out the fire right away. So that helped with the idea that maybe if a food is a little bit spicy, you can use water to help cool it off a little bit. At the time, it actually became a pretty fun process for him, and he was actually having a good time with it. A little bit of mind games can be kind of fun. So let's say there's a new food that you would like them to try. There's 2 ways you could do this. You could either say, "Hi, would you like to try this new food?" which is likely to get you a no, especially from a toddler. Or you can just simply walk up to them when you know they're hungry and start munching on it deliciously. A lot of times they'll actually respond to that more because seeing what you're eating and the fact that it looks so good makes them want to give it a try. So keep that in your back pocket. Lastly, let's talk about bribery. Most parenting advice will all tell you to avoid food bribery. And I understand the logic here. The idea is that you don't want to create a positive reward sensation or a reward association with sweet foods in particular, right? We have an obesity epidemic at the moment. And the more that we view sugary sweets as rewards and as emotional pleasure, that is not a great connection to have. So you don't want to build it into your meal times as a constant reward. You do this, I'll give you a sweet. You do this, I'll give you a sweet. However, I do think that practically it does make sense to keep the sweets to the end of the meal, not as a reward, but simply as simply just so they don't fill up on that first. So you can offer them a meal, a dinner, let's say. If you're planning on having a dessert, which you certainly don't need to do, if you keep the portion small, something that you know is well within what they can normally eat, and again, this is a slightly older child, a child that's not a toddler. So you offer a healthy meal and it's a small portion. Then you allow them to ask for more as much as they feel comfortable, and then you can offer the dessert at the end. If you don't insist that they eat that small portion first, what you will often find is that they'll take 2 bites of their favorite thing on the plate, and then they will ask for an ice cream, and you'll get into this cycle where they are eating less and less of the healthy foods because they want to have more and more of the sweet treat. Having something sweet at the end of a meal is not a reward, and it's not a punishment not to get it. It's simply delaying the sweeter portion of the meal until maybe some of the less sweet things have been eaten, just because that's a practical way for children to eat a wider variety of foods. With all of this, the goal, of course, is for your children to have a healthy relationship with food and to enjoy their food and enjoy their time eating with you as a family. I hope this video was helpful to you, and if it was, give us a like, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Learning with Love.